On that note, I'll call this meeting of the Special Fiscal Committee to order on Friday, July 24th at 8:34 a.m. Survey Hopi Stockford, District 3 Chair.
Hey, Ronald, District 4.
We do introductions right now.
Tim Shaker, Reedy Financial Group.
Justin Chang, Reedy Financial Group.
Isabel Piedmont Smith, City Council District 1.
Sophia McDowell, Clerk's Office.
Jeff McKim, City Controller. Gretchen, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So today our meeting, if you recall, was going to be a little bit longer because of the plethora of information and the never enough time problem that we always have whenever we get into these serious financial reports from Reedy. So we're going to start with the controller with second quarter reports, and then have questions and comments about that from the committee, go to public comments on the reports, and then Reedy will take it away with our more long-term financial information and challenges. Any questions or concerns with that? Great.
Thank you very much. So what you have in your packet and also on screen here is the second quarter reports. And just to kind of remind everybody how it's structured, we have two revenue reports, which are the same. We're just at two different levels of detail, the same numbers. And then we have two expense reports, which are at the same. They're the same data, but at different level of detail. And then we have a fund balance report. And I'm happy to take questions about any of them. I'm just going to point out a few things. This is to kind of tell you about things I looked at when I get reports like that. So, first, let's talk about the expenditures. When we look at the expenditure report, one of the things I always look at is just what percentage of the fund department's lines have been spent by this time of year. So what we would expect is about 50% if the budget is being spent down completely in a straight line. So I tend to look at the big operating funds, which primarily the general fund and the economic development lit fund. So if I look at the general fund, and by the way, I added these percentages just as I was looking at these. They're not in the version I gave to you. Obviously, percentages would be useful, so we'll just add that to the next edition of the report. But you could see that for the general fund, for example, we've got 48.81% of the appropriated expenditures spent so far. And then for the economic development lit, we have 48.5%. So, in general, that would tell us that, we're on track to spend 100 or near 100% of the budget with some small reversions at the end of the year. However, there are a couple of large expenditures that aren't paid out evenly in these funds, but instead are paid out at the beginning of the year. So, for example, the almost $4 million in ED lit that's paid out in the ESD budget for Bloomington Transit. That was paid out at the beginning of the year. We also have all the which we talked about at the last or one of these previous meetings. Transfers to other funds like alternative transportation, Jack Hopkins, sanitation, etc. Those were also paid out at the beginning of the year. So actually what that tells me is that although we're seeing nearly 50% of the budget the appropriations being spent down at the midpoint, that in reality, because some big expenses were front loaded, that actually we would expect to have some reversions at the end of the year. So we're actually not, and I don't know a good way to try to indicate that without literally going through every line and doing a projection.
What was the other one? You said Bloomington Transit, Jack Hopkins. What was another example?
There were a couple of transfers that are done at the beginning of the year. Sanitation. Also fleet, because the way we manage our fleet is that each of the operating budgets transfer money into the fleet management of the vehicles associated with that fund. So yeah, there were a whole bunch of kind of large front-loaded expenses, which indicates that we're in good shape to have some decent reversions by the end of the year in our major operating funds. Couple things when, there is
Hey,
a,
Jack, when
Oh,
you say
yeah.
decent versions, just could you put a number on what that might look like?
well, I mean, we've got, so the economic development lit is, or the economic development lit payment to Bloomington Transit is nearly $4 million. So I would say, because that's all front loaded, I would say $2 million of that we would have expected in the second half if it had been evenly paid out. So that, there's $2 million there. And the transfers, I think, were about $2 million. So you expect another $1 million, just, back of the napkin calculations.
Right.
When you see a negative number, so in other words, more has been spent than was in the appropriation. Usually what that would mean, well, that could mean a couple of things. It could mean that we've done an additional appropriation, but we haven't done any additional appropriations yet since you haven't seen any of those before you. But what that usually means then is that there was an encumbrance from a previous year. And I know a lot of, encumbrances are kind of weird. Basically, they're when there are appropriations that are held over from a previous year. And encumbrances can only be held over if a PO, a purchase order, and a contract are in place. So, and they're only valid for that contract. So you can't then repurpose that appropriation, that encumbrance for something else. And you can't encumber salaries. But they do constitute authorized and potential spending beyond that you actually appropriated for that budget year. We've been informed by the Department of Local Government Finance that it is best practice for us to present the city council with a list of the encumbrances at the end of the year, so it becomes a part of a public record, just to get it on the record of a public meeting. So expect to see that probably at the last meeting of the year. So a record of the encumbrances, just so you know what they are, and so that the public kind of has a way to trace back and see what those encumbrances. So any questions about that? I know that's always something people ask about, why are the negatives. One other comment on the the Housing Development Fund, that you'll see that very little of that has actually been spent, of the appropriations there have been spent. And you'll hear more about this in the Director Killian Hansen's budget report when she makes her presentation, but there's a lot in progress. And also this is a situation where the city has received far more requests than available funding can support. And sometimes to make a project work, they need full funding, but the partial funding doesn't help because it doesn't advance the project forward. So there's just a lot of work to be done, and that money doesn't necessarily get spent down in kind of an even pattern. But I know that that's often a question for that particular fund. So moving on from any other questions about the expenditures?
I just want to say you answered my questions, so good job.
Revenues, and then revenues, unlike expenditures, the budgeted revenues are not legally binding, they're just estimates. Sometimes revenue comes in for which there was no estimate at all ahead of time. So that's why when you look at these reports, you'll sometimes see a zero or blank in the amount of the budgeted amount. And that's just because there was no revenue that came in that hadn't necessarily been anticipated. So in this case, there are intergovernmental agreements. Maybe there was an agreement between, just as an example, the county and the city that hadn't been anticipated. Yes.
So I have kind of a clarification before you go further about the revenue, because usually red means that we owe something. But in this situation, when the remaining amount is in the red, the negative, it's actually a positive thing, because the actual, like what we actually got was more than we thought we were gonna get.
Unlike an expenditure that was more than we thought we would get, in this case, the revenue is more than we thought we would.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
clarify that I was thinking about that right, because that's kind of a backwards way to think about it, and make sure the public realize what's happening.
Yeah, I might wanna not do it that way. I just used a standard formula for an Excel that uses accounting formats, so.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess that's the only question I have, or like clarification I want to make of this.
Okay.
And then you-
So just a couple of things to mention. Let's see, we have, in taxes, as an example, normally with taxes, you would kind of expect by this time to have received 50% of the taxes. Actually, a better example is with economic development lit. So because that's the only funding source for economic development lit. So we anticipated, our certified amount was, our certified lit was about 18 million. What and local income tax is normally paid every month, or it's paid monthly. So by this time, we would expect to have received exactly 50% of our lit. But you'll see that we've actually received more than 50% of our budgeted amount. And the reason for that is the supplemental. Because we get this supplemental that, with this year, in 2026 was not budgeted for. So you're actually lining up with more lit than we had anticipated. And then finally, the other thing I want to call attention to, because this will matter in the future and then during budget, is actually, I'm going to go to the revenue detail, which again, it's the same as revenue, only with a lower level detail. So with is planning. We have a bunch of revenue sources like application fees, inspection fees, intergovernmental. House Enrolled Act 1001 put some new requirements on planning revenue. And in particular, the planning revenue in particular for permits and building, basically building and planning permits, which include inspections, now have to be deposited in their own separate fund. So they will no longer be, as of 2027, that revenue will no longer be in the general fund. It will instead be in a new fund that we have to create. And then we can only expend out of that fund for the actual costs of providing those building and planning permits. The reason for that is the General Assembly was convinced that local units of government were using planning and building fees as a profit center, which, I mean, Bloomington is not by a long shot using that as a profit center. As you know, our planning expenses are far more than the fees are, but this is now kind of an additional accounting step that we have to go through and segregate those fees. So from now on, and in fact, when we present the budget to you, there's going to be a new fund that's created that, forgetting the name at the moment, but it's like budget and planning or something like that, a building planning that will be segregated for permits and building fees, along with the expenditures associated.
And so to clarify, like, that will have to come before council to create a new fund, because don't we have to be there? Or is that the difference?
We will be creating it in the system now, basically, because we have to include in our budget proposal. But yes, you'll essentially be doing it implicitly when you approve the budget for that.
Okay, so that will be part of the whole budget package as opposed to its own separate legislation.
Right, correct, yeah. And it will not, it really ultimately shouldn't result in any change in either expenses or revenue. It's honestly just a lot more accounting work, and not just in our office, but also in the department. So it's just this extra work because the department is required to reconcile their actual expenses in granting these permits with the fees that are brought up. So it's just, more work for them.
Jeff, I know that when a developer does is building public services, roads or detention ponds or something like that, they pay a bond to ensure that they fulfill that obligation. Where's that money go? I mean,
So generally the bond, we don't actually cash it's usually done in the form of an insurance policy that just sits in a shelf unless it actually gets called. We did actually have a fairly recent instance where we had a developer bond called, and it went into the general fund where the engineering department was, essentially used the money to do the remediation of what they had to fix. But the developer wasn't either able or willing to do.
Okay.
So I mean, that's generally the idea. We're also not supposed to make a profit on bond.
Well,
But we're supposed to use it to cover the costs of doing what the developer should have done.
just curious, was it covered? Was that expense covered?
There were actually two different instances. One of them more than enough, which actually created a problem because we then had to figure out what to do with the rest of it, how to get the rest back to the insurance company, and the other, no.
Okay.
Yeah, the bond doesn't always cover the cost of remediation.
Was that the digital installation for the fiber?
No, that's another thing. You will be seeing, just a sneak preview in the budget presentation. The budget proposal will include a $500,000 transfer out of that fund to the digital, the fiber connectivity fund, which is used to defray half the costs of connecting low-income houses with the fiber network.
Okay, no, I was just thinking the bond that there were so many company names, I can't keep track, but that the company had that was supposed to install the fiber that actually.
It was
led to-
Meridian Fiber's subcontractor, AEG.
Right.
Yeah.
That made a lot of mistakes and caused a lot of cleanup work.
Yes.
And that bond was tapped, right, to pay for that.
They paid for that, but the bond was also, they also had to deposit $1 million into this fund that I was telling you about. We call the surety bond proceeds fund. You all created that last year.
But that was insurance, that wasn't, the low income access, or was it?
We are
The fund-
proposing to transfer $500,000. I'm kind of giving you a seat. This is the budget.
Well, we have other things. I think the real question here is that has the city had any recovered expenses related to having to clean it?
That would be an engineering question.
I think my understanding is that some of the repair work will be done by the company that takes on the new contract. So in other words, there were some repairs that we might have made, but then some that whoever assumed the next phase of contract also assumes a portion. And I don't know any of the details on this, of the actual repair of problems that might be possible. So it's sort of a package deal. You want the opportunity to go forward, you also assume some of the problems that have to be solved.
And just FYI that I'm not, I'm pretty much done with my report, but if you go to the fund balances report, goes in your pack, you'll see the fund name, the surety bond proceeds fund. That's the fund that you all created last year to receive that $1 million bond. And that's, as you can see, none of that money has actually been spent yet. Again, we will be making a proposal during budget. So I think that's all I've got. Do you all have any other questions?
Questions on the writing side? I have a couple of questions. One is, I'm wondering if there's any consequences that we're gonna see with regard to the fuel tax costs that are made. I mean, I know we pledged to like pay local units.
Actually, we've already received the first payment back from that. So right now, our gas tax revenue is looking good.
All right. And then I had another question while we're on the fund page about 2416 Start Here Safer Streets, which has a 0 balance. And I'm wondering if that is a new or old fund. Because of course we have the Safe Streets for All initiative, and I guess I'm just wondering, I've never noticed that fund.
That is, I actually don't know what that is. I have never had to touch it, so I'm gonna guess it's an old fund. It's definitely not one we created. One of the frustrations with our system is that we can't create like a favorites list. You know, we basically either select individually or we get them all. And some of these funds have just not been used in years. So
I guess I'm kind of curious about that because, depending on what it says, it might be sort of a useful fund at this point, I'm thinking about our Safe Streets for All kind of action plan, and I don't know if there's any way to utilize that at all for
Yeah.
anything, but I just saw that and I made that relationship and I thought, interesting, so.
Of course, there's no money.
Right, there's no money in it, but that's what I'm kind of like, you know, sometimes we'll create more funds with the idea of like using some fund that's already in existence for what it is that we want, so.
Right, like alternative transportation is the fund that would come logically
Yeah,
to mind for me for funding
yeah,
the pedestrian and bike improvements.
okay. And then I think I have one more. Let me just, there's a lot of pages.
I did think of a question if I could.
Yeah, I found it. You mentioned that the PD lit total was about half, but I noticed that the public safety lit was far less than half. So what's going on with our public safety?
Yeah, the public safety lit fund has tended to be used more for capital expenses. And capital expenses are always more lumpy. They're not, you know, they're not paid out over time in an even way. I think that's kind of shifted over the years, and this year there are some more operational expenses that are being put out of there, but they're still.
Well, I meant on the revenue side. Like on the revenue side, we budgeted 4.8 million and then we've only received 1.4. I'm in the summary, the revenue summary.
Public safety.
Of public safety, yeah. That right there, that 4.8 versus the 4, that's next to it.
Oh, yeah. I think that was budgeted incorrectly, honestly, because the PSAP, the public safety answering point revenue comes out of that, and so if you copy the wrong number, if you look at the wrong number for public safety, you might not be, you might be including some of that revenue rather than only the money that's supposed to be coming in from public safety. That's my guess, just right off the bat and looking at that.
Right, I would love it if we could maybe look into that a little bit, because that's significantly like less than half.
Yeah, because we do receive all of the payments for lit on a monthly basis.
Right.
So those should be, in terms of actually bringing in revenue, should be totally caught up.
So Jeff, you're saying that the revenue, the budgeted revenue for lit public safety of 4.8 million is incorrect?
You know,
including PSAP?
Let me look into it before I say that firmly. I just, that was my guess when Councilman Bristosko brought this up. So let me look into it. Get you another answer.
Isabel, what was your question?
The ARPA COVID funds, they have to be spent by the end of this year, don't they?
Yes. And there's a lot of.
Are we on track?
There's a lot of effort spent and meetings with departments and our office and departments and the attorney from Barnes and Thornburg that we've used as a ARPA consultant. Those discussions are very active.
Let's go to public comment then around any of these reports. If there's a member of the public who would like to comment on our second quarter reports, please raise your hand. There's nobody in the room still. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Great. Thank you very much. Jeff, that means that you were so complete with your presentation that nobody has any additional questions. So now we're on to Reedy. Perfect. So the next kind of heavy hitting detailed piece, take your way.
Well, it's just, sorry, let me just make sure it's the,
Tim, right?
okay, it's sure.
Like you can skip to I think slide 4, because everything else is just going to order. we're going to go through the presentation, but as we go, there are certain topics that we will need to dive further. There's 3 other handouts that we provided, and we'll let you guys know which ones we'll look at, but, just as we go through the presentation, most of the talking points is gonna be focused on local income tax, property tax, the general fund, which Jeff really just talked about, and, property tax, debt related debt. So, again, we'll reference these as we go. If there are any questions, please feel free to stop us, and we'll be happy to answer.
And for the sake of the public, this, presentation did go out in, addendum 1, of the packet. And I'm kind of hoping that the additional piece we have here are also in addendum 1, there was
The
a
sheet,
lot of pieces.
the data should be now, as I mentioned, I don't know if that went out to the public, but the presentation is clearly glitched. So it did not, import cleanly into Google Sheets. It's a PowerPoint. So we're gonna have to fix that.
All right. So I was looking this up as the question was asked about the public safety lit. For those in the public and everyone here, if you want to see what the Department of Local Government Finance has certified for the city for 2026, you can actually go to the BLGF website. That's ian.gov/BLGF. Your certified public safety distribution for 26 is $4,875,567. So, yeah,
That sounds correct.
the whole thing. So yeah, if you go to ian.gov.
Just the number.
The number, okay, for public safety, it's $4,875,567.
And that's their estimate.
Certified, so the income tax basically comes in exactly as we're, as is certified.
So that's the
plus a
number that we
supplement.
have in the budget.
Yeah. To me, that just seems like the piece that public safety access point was front loaded. Out of the public safety fund. So. All right, we'll just. Back to the presentation. So first bullet point there. Capital plan and bond timing, I will say right now, I guess we're technically on draft 2 of the long-term capital improvement plan. That's gonna be 5 years of capital outlays planned, alongside your operating expenses as well. So that's actually tied to individual funds within the financial plan, which the financial plan should be part of the package, correct? Yep. Okay, yep. Really, with a big part of the capital plan is just gonna kind of depend on the council's appetite for bond sizing and the timing. And I'll let Justin get to that when we get to that. There is, just so everyone's aware, there's a pretty significant opportunity if you wanted to keep the property tax rate similar to the next closest city, which would be Lafayette. You're about 20 cents lower currently than Lafayette. So, and a 20-cent debt rate, not that you have to or even need to do a full 20-cent debt rate, but that would be roughly $11.2 million annually of debt service that can fund capital improvements. Any questions on that portion of it? Because I know that's quite a bit there, right out the cage.
You're
gonna talk more.
I'm gonna talk more on that later too, so that.
Yep. And just something to keep in mind there, depending on the length of the bond and issuance costs and all that stuff, that 11.2 can fluctuate a little bit. So.
It would be helpful, maybe, so this is the next comparable city, Lafayette, but, if we can, it's nice to have a visual of where we lie within other cities.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's on here somewhere.
is it in?
Yeah,
Just
there's,
you guys saw.
There is
Some several
there's a
comparisons to
separate.
other cities.
Yeah, this is kind of just the preliminary stuff.
Yeah, why don't we
we'll handle it as we
just wait on
move
questions
forward.
for a little while until.
Yeah.
You guys finish kind of your
Good idea.
presentation part.
the next point's kind of pretty much saying the same thing, I think. Must committee meeting. I don't know if you guys heard from the county, if there's, any updates on that. Just know that our firm has prepared an analysis of impact projections based on the statute as it currently reads. So, and I say that because it may change. They technically have until the 28th General Assembly to change it, because they think 29 is gonna be the first year for the income tax impacts, so. We may have changes next year and changes in 28, so
Yeah. How are we supposed to plan? Okay.
just and kind of on that same point. The entire plan really hinges upon how that income tax situation under SCA 1/HCH 12 is gonna play out. So just keep that in mind as we go through the plan. I think we covered this slide last time, but just, and I don't know if anyone needs a recap, maybe for the people that are on, for the public, need a quick recap here. Essentially, the city can either choose to do its own local income tax rate under the statute the way it currently reads, and that would start in 2029. Or the city can opt into a countywide, what's called a municipal services rate, which would go to primarily just cities and towns within the county.
And those are the last two columns.
Those are the last two columns, correct. The rest of those columns really don't matter to the city so much unless it gets to a point where that actually affects the rate that the county will adopt for the city, if that makes sense. Because everything in green, the city has no control over that. And really, you don't have control over that first blue column either. That's, you only have control over that last cities and towns under 3,500 people.
I will say the fire and EMS does matter to us.
Fire and EMS does matter quite a bit, yes.
But we don't have any control over it.
Correct,
But the first blue box, that's like the must committee thing that has control over that, right?
correct, yes.
Okay.
And the Must Committee really isn't legally binding either, so. I mean, it really just, it comes down to the county council having that final, the way the statute currently reads is county council will have that ultimate authority. So. Any questions on the sort of how it works?
No, I do wanna say though, for the sake of maybe my committee members, you know, we get these emails, I assume that you all get them too from AIM about different, workshops and things related to various things.
Oh, yeah,
And there
there's
was
one
one
from-
related to the must.
Yeah.
Committee stuff on Monday, and I did sign up to go, and I can, forward that to anybody else who was interested, you want me to forward that, it's like in
Yeah.
the morning on Monday, I don't know what it works.
And assuming,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that they often record those too, and send out the recordings afterwards too, so I can find that in my email for that too.
that would be great.
If I don't do that by the end of today, like remind me.
Mhm.
Here's the only point I'm gonna make on that is I agree that the AIM presentations are great and they're really valuable. It's really interesting to see kind of from the county side, their lobby group, AIC, has their own set of presentations, and it's just interesting to see the difference in the way that they spin these various rates. So, you know, the AIM is very much, you know, do this must process, go, you know, do it early, participate widely, and AIC is basically telling the counties to kind of hold back, and that there's, you know, really not a lot of benefit to them going forward with it. So it's just, it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Well, I think the AM workshop on Monday had somebody from the AIC that's going to participate in it. So
I can't actually remember, I was like on vacation.
That,
I saw that, and I
that'll
was
be
like,
interesting.
I better get that signed up.
I think it's good for us to keep remembering and saying in public also that in 3 of the 4 county districts, the majority of their constituents are also city residents.
6 out of 7 county council members, the majority of their constituents are city residents.
that's even better. Yeah.
And I'd say there's merit to both sides, right? I think definitely for the public and everyone involved in the community needs to kind of get together to know how this thing's gonna work at a high level, right? But to AIC's point, we don't have adjusted gross income basis for any of the cities or towns. So there's really not like an ideal way to project your impacts. So
That's a huge point, actually, and is that for counties, we know exactly what their AGI is. We know what counties, what income tax counties bring in, but for cities, it's a guess. It's just a projection based on, I don't know what data points you use to project, but it is just a guess.
The method we use to do the city's impact is American Community Survey, which is census data. We get that on census.gov, and everything's noted in the SCA1/HH analysis with the links. Essentially, you just take the 24 data, which is really 23 data, inflate the 24, and then you inflate that to the current 26 data, and then inflate that further to 29. So I mean, it's a logical mathematical method, but it's a projection on a projection. So it's about the best method we could come up with. So any questions on that? All right, so where the rubber meets the road here, and this is why I said that everything in the financial plan hinges upon how this plays out. So if the city were to do its own 1.2% lid, which would only be on the city, people living within the corporate boundaries of the city, based on the AGI method that I just talked about, you would be about 18.4 million less net property tax levy and local income tax total than you would be under the current system in 2029.
Can you just clarify that first column is what would happen if there was no SCA one?
Yeah, the first column is pretending like none of this stuff ever happened, and it would just be the current
So
system.
that's in our current system, that's what we would have expected.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is no
The-
SCA one.
The
And
first
for the
column
sake of
on
the
the left.
public,
The first
this
column.
graph did not transfer into the packet, but I feel like I remember seeing this graph somewhere else in some of the documents that got sent in the original one. There was a lot of pages of stuff. Yeah,
yeah, so 29 pretty much ignores current statute, pretends like we're under the system that we're, anyway. That's with a 6% max levy growth quotient and a 1% local income tax growth per year. Those are the big assumptions that are used in that. And those same assumptions, so 6% max levy growth and 1% local income tax growth per year is in the other three examples as well. Just to keep it as similar as we could. So yeah, and then the next scenario is right now, based on the information that we have, doing a parcel by parcel analysis, getting every single unit's property tax impact, basically, what they're losing in property tax. That includes the county, townships, library, all that stuff. That's the break even analysis. So that right now is what is in the plan. Not the best case scenario, not the worst case scenario, just kind of the hopeful scenario is what I'm gonna call it.
so that's the third column.
That's the third column,
Okay,
yes.
so you already talked about the second column, I missed it.
Second column,
That's just.
that's just the
That's just if we do the city lit, so
That's
that.
how
you control your own
Just pull it
destiny.
over there.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to put that in perspective.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's just terrible.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to line up the bullet points on the side with the column, like with the chart. So that's the first bullet point.
Yeah, so, and the one next to that
Right.
is just the maximum municipal services lit only. And the reason why we wanted to put that in there is to see how dramatically different that is, the city opting in to a countywide rate. That's not even, that doesn't even include fire and EMS, that's just,
Hold on.
Right, so that's not even the rosiest.
So that's not the second,
that's the last column.
right, but that's not the second
The
bullet.
second bullet point is a little more confusing because it includes a little bit of fire and EMS and a little bit of municipal services.
Okay, and is that the third, the fourth?
The third
column?
one, the fourth column is just the municipal services, maxed out.
Oh,
Yeah.
so the third column doesn't have a bullet point over here?
The bullets don't line up with the columns, they're general.
Yeah.
The second one is really
Yeah.
the yellow box.
Which I just like, that would have been smart, right, to
Yeah.
have each individual bullet point.
Right.
You can work on your presentation.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's, you'll be heard. Okay, so the yellow
Yes,
is,
that's the yellow.
all right.
So the best case scenario is actually more than that last column,
Yes, it would be more than the 90.
because it would have some.
Yeah, there's a fire EMS and the full maximum.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
there's no actual yellow column in the 99, but there's some stuff that should be yellow.
Yeah, there's kind of a dual reason why I didn't put fire and EMS in there, it's because the county has complete control of that. And if the county sees that they can make you whole with just the maxing out municipal services lid, they may decide to do a lower fire amount to, get Monroe County Fire Protection District to break even, and then not give the city anything. Right? I mean, it's fully in the county's control to do with fire and EMS lid if they want to.
Right.
So there's
So
no.
that's like maxing out the municipal services lit, but not having any fire and EMS lit.
Correct. To the city. Now, there may be some other units, but
Right.
Yeah, that is kind of odd that the city, the county is required to consider service area and population served, but it doesn't give them an actual formula to use those. They can say, oh, we've duly considered it, and the city doesn't.
No.
I will say that the AIC presentation that I saw the city or AIC give the county council on this, they seem to be supporting the fire EMS rate rather than the municipal services rate. They were still very much pitching the municipal services rate as a small municipalities rate, which it was before HGA 1210.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how that would go.
And actually, thinking out loud, it may make more sense to look at the Senate Millback 1 and House Millback's 1210 handout right now before we. Does that make sense, Jeff?
One with the yellow line going across it.
Oh, and this is somewhere in one of our packets, let me see if it contains.
That's also what I did with the original.
Is it? Okay, well,
Yeah, it's the one with the line. It's the easiest way to find it.
it's the next page, so I retract my,
And these were provided as part of that.
So we're gonna keep that this time? or-
yes. Unless people have questions about this slide.
Yeah, I think that these are also part of the packet.
One thing important to keep in mind, I think everyone here in the room probably knows this, but for those in the public that are listening, the reason why it's so much more favorable for the city to opt in is because cities and towns get a 1.5 multiplier on their population. So cities and towns are always essentially going to get more local income tax opting into a pool of taxpayers that's the entire county than they would opting into their own pool. So the county doesn't get much of that municipal services rate. They only get what's left over after the cities and towns get their allocation. So. Oh, I think we lost it, Jeff.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize they wanted me to project this one, so it's just taking me a second to find that.
I think he was saying.
I don't think we need it to Jeff.
He was saying
It's just the next page of the, yes, sorry,
Alright.
the next two pages.
Yes. Even though Justin and I assembled the presentation together, I forgot that the very next slide was what I was getting ready to talk about.
There's a lot of information, like this was a pretty massive thing to try to digest this.
It's another water, without getting on it.
All right, so there's a wall of numbers on this slide, which I don't know. This may have been one of the things that glitched.
No, it didn't actually.
It did not glitch,
No.
okay. This is the breakdown to each unit based on that break even lit. So that would have been the third graph, the third column in that graph. So you can see the city here. And the rates get a little bit weird because it's not the full amount of rate you can actually do, so just kind of bear with me there. But you can see the top example, the county, their break even amount, because they get a little bit of the municipal services lit. And you can see at the 1.03% rate that we're showing there, the county would get about 3.7 million of that. But the county to break even, and that factors in their property tax loss based on the parcel data that ran. Now that's probably gonna change in 29 too, it's just best guess. They would only need about 0.8706 out of their maximum 1.2 lit to break even. And the reason why that's important is because that will keep the overall local income tax rate that taxpayers pay lower.
And that's something I think we need to keep talking about with the public as well, is what is the overall tax rate for the public versus the benefit that we all get as county and city governments. It sounds like you're saying, Tim, that one rate will give a better result to everybody than piling up multiple smaller pieces that ultimately residents would pay more and we would receive less.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I think it's roughly 52 and 55% of the total population of Monroe County lives within corporate boundaries of Bloomington. So, to your point, having different rates, if Bloomington has to max out their own rate, and then the county still does the same, I mean, that's, you're paying, people are paying a much higher rate on average in the county. Yes. Just because most of the county lives in Bloomington. Lots to take in, I know. At that 1.03% municipal services lit rate, you can see here the city, so you guys are the next one down, in yellow. It's about 42 million that you would receive. That's using 26 certified members and then adding 1% per year on top of that. And this is just mathematical. Really, the only thing that can be wrong here is the growth, local income tax growth assumption.
And these are 29.
This would be 29 assumption here, yes. And then you can see you lose operating property tax levy, and then you lose debt capacity as well, just because your net assessed value was going to be lower under Senate Bill Act 1 than it would have been without Senate Bill Act 1. Because
Which is that's like
because it's a deduction.
system-wide, right? Like statewide.
Yeah, that's statewide. That's not anything the city controls. That's statutory. It's property tax stuff, so it's probably not going to change. I'm just going to throw that out there too. So,
And you can look at that last column and see who the real losers are from this day one. And who don't have the power to make up the difference, and that's just cool.
yeah. So when
And the library.
we say break even, there are units in here that really cannot be made whole under a direct local income tax structure. It would have to be a very difficult interlocal agreement process, and then that just gets way too in the weeds and it's way too complicated and technical. So, but schools cannot get any direct local income tax under this system.
And I just want to throw out there that one of the things that means for our community is that our schools are probably not going to be able to provide all the services that they currently provide, which means that either our community members just do without, or they need to like backstop that in some other way, which may be other units of government, it could be nonprofits, those services, and it's going to be a loss.
And it will go deeper than that, or the operating costs, like they will not be able to, beyond special services, this will mean deep cuts for them.
Can I go back to, how did the county with county services only, with a municipal services tax rate of 1.03%, how did the county only get 3.7 million of that? And the city got 42 million of that? What is the math?
Yeah, so under House and Bill Act 1210, the municipal services lid, that's taxed on every single income taxpayer in the county. But the cities and towns within that column get a 1.5x multiplier on their population. So really that means there's less population based math on for the unincorporated area of the county, if that makes sense. So the cities and towns basically they get more, they get a bigger share than they would normally.
So if everybody in the county gets taxed, then it gets distributed to different units based on the population size.
Mm-hmm.
So we would get the most of that than any other piece in the county, because Bloomington has the highest population.
Well, I understand that, but it's the multiplier that makes such a.
It's the multiplier that makes the entire difference here, yes.
I will say that when I first saw that number, I didn't believe it either. And I went to the statute and literally followed all the like step one, divide this by this, and it comes out exactly right. That's the way the statute is written.
Yeah, so Bloomington goes from, 52% to, what was that, 75.8% or something like that of the total distribution. This stuff that, if there's any TKs out there looking at this, there's some weird rounding stuff with the rates, because we don't want to go to like the millionth decimal place, it's really just 4 decimal places. So when you do that, some of these units end up with weird roundings, like Ellisville gets a little more, and Sinesville gets a little more. So, yeah, that's the reason for that. If there's any math nerds out there, so.
There are.
There are.
Okay.
I saw who was on.
Any questions on this giant fortress of numbers?
No.
And so I have a question.
Yes.
So that really, like, in terms of the 2029 surplus deficit, you basically like tried to match from the page before what we would have expected without SCA one in terms of matching those rates.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, it's just a kind of like a theoretical what could happen. In terms of those percentages.
Yes, it's go to the county and say, hey, we want to keep people at an even keel, or we want to let people eat a property tax loss, what are we gonna do? So this is like the middle of the road scenario. It's not the best case scenario. It's certainly not the worst case scenario.
So the second to last column,
Mhm.
where you're adding a fire EMS lit rate,
Yes.
why are there numbers for the school corporations and the townships?
So there should only be on the townships.
Yeah, there's only.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, again, the fire EMS, that is completely discretionary to the county.
But the townships don't have their own fire departments. Or maybe one or
If they-
two do, but most.
Yeah,
of
and
them
the
don't.
contract and stuff like that, they can, this is just, again, this is the county, if you read the statute in HA 1210, it doesn't really even,
Yeah, most of these are provided by Monroe
Monroe.
Fire Protection or by Ellisville.
yeah, it doesn't really even limit it to fire and EMS, and that was actually one of the points that Representative Thompson, I think, probably wants to fix. Or in the 27 or 28 session, so to your point, these numbers may go away.
And Ellisville,
Where is the Ellisville fire?
yeah, it's not,
It's gonna be in the Ellisville town,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
there's
which-
But
nothing
there's nothing
listed.
added for fire units.
because they don't need it.
Oh.
They don't need anything to break even in this scenario. Based on that municipal services scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not predicting what the county is going to do. You're saying, what do we need to?
This is what we need to break even, basically.
What each unit needs.
Yes,
not just
yeah,
the-
not just, yeah, it's. Will the county want to go to this length to get the exact percentages of wood that everyone needs? Maybe, maybe not. It's up to their discretion.
And this would also allow the county government to break even.
Yes.
All right, so we should probably,
Yeah, we
move
should
on.
probably keep nobody sorry.
Yep.
There's never enough time.
We have till 10, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there's still quite a bit, yeah, there's a lot. Like, we've gotten adjusted stuff. The next slide, please, which you can't really see unless you're squinting. It would be the impact to homeowners. Now, this is not gonna be the impact to all income taxpayers, it's just the homeowners, keep that in mind. Under that scenario, the break-even scenario, which follows the previous slide. So you can see for the most part, because of the property tax savings to homeowners, in most of these taxing districts, people are actually going to be saving money, even with an increase to the overall level income tax rate. And that is one thing I didn't mention, and in the break-even local income tax scenario, we're going from a 2.14% current local income tax rate to 2.4512. Which is about a 0.3112% increase. And that is factored into this slide. So you can see on average, taxpayers save roughly $657 in their property tax bill. That would be the old system, so no SCA 1, no HH 12, none of that. And then with SCA 1, because of the deductions and the straight up credits that homeowners are getting, on average, we're saving about $660 on property tax bills.
Wait, where did 660 come from?
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, for the fifth column, SCA 1 mean property tax bill increase/decrease.
And we're all the way down,
Oh.
the bolded 657.46.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
The important thing to note on this,
And so this is what taxpayers pay,
yes, this is.
property taxes.
Yes, and this is the average, based on the average homeowner gross assessed value, running that through the property tax. This is every single parcel has been ran on this. This is just the average. Now, this is gonna vary wildly depending on the gross AV of your home, but this is the average of all homes.
Right. And what we can see is that this is basically shifting some of the costs of local government from homeowners to.
Employees.
Correct, we're shifting it from wealth to income, essentially is what we're doing.
Oh, wait a minute.
So,
So do not all of these columns talk about, you started saying that it was all talking about homeowners, but is the list stuff talking about all people who are paying income tax?
this would be, yeah, anyone that's paying income tax, and this, we just use
Okay.
average household income on this.
Okay, so in the next column where it says 2029 projected median household income, that's not just for homeowners, that's for everybody, every household, regardless of.
It would be more just for these households, right? Because it's not gonna cover the other things that are paid. And this isn't even, I mean, we don't know what actual household income is gonna be in 2029. This is just using the census data, and the best knowledge that we have currently. So,
Right, so I'm just trying to understand the next columns after that average property tax savings. So if the average person is saving the $657 in terms of through the whole county on their property taxes, like, is one of the other columns like what they would be paying in lit and how much more they might be paying in lit?
yeah, so going from the 2029 projection, mean household income, the next column immediately is what that household income would pay under SCA 1, so the 2.4512% lit.
Okay,
So you can see there, let's just take, Bloomington Township, for example. Average household income, $77,728. Under SCA 1, that household would pay roughly $1,905 of income tax under SCA 1.
okay,
The next column is the comparison to what they would pay without SCA 1. So that's the current local income tax rate of 2.14%.
right, but that's also what they're paying in 2026, not 2029.
Well, it's grown 1% per year.
Using the
Same as
rate.
Yes, using the rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is also then a 2029 estimate?
Yeah, the 2029 mean household income, that is taking the 24 census data and growing it to what we think it's going to be in 21.
All right,
So it's the same base for each scenario. The only thing that's changing is the rate for local income tax rate. Does that make sense?
So the projected mean household income in Bloomington Township in 2029 is only $77,000.
Yes, and you can see it varies significantly from taxing district to taxing district. And most of your income in Monroe County is outside of city limits, like
Look at Richard.
per average, right?
Dang.
So that's just another reason why the city makes less local income tax due on its own. Because on average, outside of the incorporated area of the city, the household average income is higher. So,
Interesting.
and so then continuing down this, the next so it appears as though under SEA one, most units are paying more lit.
Yes,
And so then that second to last column is how much more lit they're paying.
how much more you're paying versus the property tax, so it's netting.
Well, no, the second to last column.
Second to last column is, yes, you're correct, that is the increase or decrease, which in this case it's an increase for pretty much everyone.
And so then the last one is the property tax savings.
Netted against the increase in local income tax.
Right, so then on average, just to really make sure that the public hears this, is what the state just did is potentially save the average homeowner $350 at the expense of our school systems right now, and potentially at the expense of our other local units of government, and at least at the expense of a whole lot of time right now that's being spent by local units that are figuring this out.
Yes,
This is for an average of $353 per year. Projected savings per year.
At the expense of our children.
except in Scienцeville, they just end up paying more. So,
Oh, right. Sorry, Steinsville.
Oh, yeah, Steinsville does end up just paying more.
yeah, there's,
Yeah.
so Senate Roll Act one, it's kind of regressive in the property tax savings, as in the higher your home value, the more savings you have.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are, because there's a fixed portion now.
You
and-
should say that louder for people in the back.
Yeah, because there's a fixed portion that you get now on your deduction if you own a home, and a supplemental portion. Because the fixed portion of that is worth more to you if your home value is lower, that goes away. So actually the people that have, and it's something like, if your home is less than 150,000 gross assessed value, I think, on the books, you actually end up paying more property tax under SEA one than you would without SEA one. So it's definitely a regressive thing.
Well, looking at the household income in Steinsville, average of 76,000, and that they're paying more, I would say that's demonstrably regressive.
Yeah.
Yes, to your point, the average home value in Scienцeville is lower. It's under that roughly $150,000 threshold, so that's why they're paying more.
Yeah, I mean, they're only saving an average of $24.74 on their property tax. So,
Yeah.
like, it's really. Anyway. I think we all understand this chart, thank you. It lays it out very nicely. Yeah. I may try to put together some kind of report about this. For.
So I have a hard stop with me.
Yeah, we-
Others,
Okay, let's, yeah, I think,
just FYI.
So
yeah, you can talk about that.
Long-term capital plan, tax rate planning, we sort of put this together because the way our tax system works, really what all that we can control is the debt tax rates. The levy is, the maximum levy funds are the same, the maximum rate funds are the same. So what we can control with with our tax rate planning really is the debt portions, the debt funds. And in order to fund all of our long-term capital plan items, a lot of that or most of that has to come through debtors issuances. So we actually worked with Jeff and all the department, Jeff worked with all the department heads, and we worked with Jeff to come up with this long-term capital plan. This is actually, I want to say, like a 10-page capital plan that we just shortened into half a page. But to give you guys just a general idea, if you look at that grand total, all departments as shown, row there's a green and a red. Green is how much that we are currently funding, either through for property tax bonds that we previously issued and still have cash on hand, or bonds that we are looking to issue, and then we will talk about those potential bonds later as well. But if we look at 2027, we have $77 million in total capital requests. Currently, we are funding $65 million of that, and we are $12 million unfunded, even with
the potential bond issues that we're talking about. So when we go on to the next pages, I would just keep those numbers in mind, because what we're going to talk about doesn't solve all of the capital funding issue right now. Now, I will also say, in 2031, that $26.4 million, those numbers will likely go down, as we look at further bond issuances. So this is a long-term capital plan that goes out 5 years, but our capital funding mechanisms, we can't look at that far, but we haven't yet, so.
And can I just mention that these numbers that go into here as far as capital needs come from the department heads who have gone in a fair amount of detail and projected out their requests. That does not mean that any of them have been approved. They're not part of the mayor's budget at this point necessarily, and some might be, but just to be clear, these are based on expert estimation of what's needed.
And for the benefit of the public, could you just say a few words, Jeff, or somebody about what kinds of things those are? So you're out in the public and you're listening, you're like capital projects, what is that? Some things that would include would be
Vehicles, which, can be cars for, hand inspectors all the way up to garbage trucks and snow plows. In particular, the Public Works Department, as I think you all know, is very interested in the new ops center to replace some seriously aging and decrepit facilities. That's one reason why the 2027 numbers look so big, because it does include that request. And, so vehicles, improvements to building, capital improvements to buildings, engineering. So like, for example, you'll see some budget requests this year for safety related improvements to pedestrian infrastructure and new signals and signal modernization in streets. So those are and then just other public works, other street expenses. Parking meters, new parking meters.
The Parks Department stuff might include some of the things that they identified in their master planning in this meeting, like the skating rink, the pools.
Yeah, I didn't include, you're right, my list, I didn't include parks or bus.
For everyone, everyone listening, included in your packet, within the financial plan in the packet, in the capital plan section, you will see each individual thing that is right now, funding at the discretion of the administration, what's in the plan. So it has everything individually listed.
Okay, somewhere in the packet.
Yes.
Yes. So we can go on to the next couple pages. The next 2 to 3 pages are actually on the general fund, which I don't know how much we need to go into, because I know Jeff just discussed that at the very beginning of this meeting. Is there anything that you want to point out here, Ted?
I think just the big thing on the general fund, and
The next page.
yeah, Jeff, if you don't mind going to the next page. Really the big thing to look out for here, just keep in mind that until we get a lit structure in place, there actually is an operating deficit currently within the general fund. So now there's ample cash in the general fund. I will say the preface with that. But as you can see, so to be down at the very bottom, revenue over under expenditures.
Purple paper.
Yeah, pink down there at the very bottom. So you can see we have about a $7.8 million deficit built into this year. That's just based on current spending, current revenue projections. That's probably going to change by the time we do third quarter, second quarter, all that stuff. And then you can see in 27 and 28, there's also deficits planned in those years as well.
And how do we get a $16 million
Yeah,
overage in 2029?
That is slightly complicated.
Was it the lottery?
Yeah, so because the local income tax structure, as we know, it completely ceases to exist in 2029. This is assuming that we're no longer funding any of your local economic development, public safety with it, or PSAP within those funds. We're transferring it all to the general fund, and it's all going to be funded out of general fund. So because we're doing that, these are the cash balances, the year-end cash balances for 28. or beginning cash balance 2029, whichever way you want to look at it, that we're essentially giving to the general fund because we're no longer funding, those funds won't exist.
So in essence, it's not new money.
It's not new money.
Existing money that
It's
we moved
everything.
into this.
Correct. Yes,
Just a transfer.
and that's why you see the revenue over under goes way down in 2030 and 2031.
The three transfer item, transfer of PSAP, transfer, and the two transfers of lit, those add up to almost the exact $16 million, so just to keep that, put that in perspective.
Can you talk about the interest on investments? You've got it highlighted in yellow because we talked about it and because it's big.
Yes, so important thing to keep in mind on interest, on investments, if we're lowering our cash balances overall, we're not going to generate as much interest revenue, right? And we're also going to assume that the Fed's probably going to lower the reserve rate in the future. Which they may or may not do, so that's just another assumption, keep in mind with your plan. That's why we're going from 3.8 million projected in 26 to roughly 1.9 million projected in 27, because we're spending down roughly $8 million of cash.
Plus ARPA.
Plus ARPA, yes. And then you can see, because we spent out more cash in 27, we're lowering it again in 28. We're bumping it back up in 29 because that's based on the break-even lit, assuming that we're gonna get the lit scenario, we're gonna have more cash again to build interest up. So
I find it notable that we're assuming we're gonna end the Bloomington Transit interlocal agreement. I mean, that's something we may have to do fiscally, but it's a big policy choice that we should think about.
They are certainly aware that, the money isn't there to continue doing that. I know
That's good.
that they'll have a change in leadership, of course, as we all know now, but certainly until now, it's been very clear that that was one-time money and that it's highly unlikely that there would be a source to continue that.
And just to sort of ease maybe some of that anxiety, in 29, the county does, under House Bill Act 1210, have the ability to give Bloomington Transportation a significant amount of local income tax revenue.
And they've been working in their long-term planning, they've accounted for their vision of expansion and where that funding would come from.
And you can see their impact on the SCA1, HA 1210 analysis that's included in this packet.
I will ask, why do you show the end of Bloomington Transit kind of as a revenue?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, because
I mean, we were paying for it out of lit, so.
yeah, it's currently built in as an expense, so it's either we show it as like a negative, essentially a negative expense, or we show it as a revenue, right? It's kind of pick your poison. It's just that we're getting that 3.8 million back.
But you're not double counting.
We're not double counting it, correct? We did not lower the expense in the lit fund.
Got it.
Correct. Yes. It just,
Right, I do want to make note that we need to be sure to go to public comment.
Yeah, okay.
That based on who I saw there earlier, they may have public comment on this. Maybe 3 minutes or so.
Just all I did for rates, because I think it's the last thing we know.
Okay. Tax rates, I think this was mentioned earlier, and there were questions on, I want to see sort of a chart. We have made projections out for the city's tax rates going out to 2030. This is assuming the current bond still exists and levy still exists without adding anything new. In 2026, we're at 84 cents, and that stays relatively in that area. It goes up a little bit because we're not expecting net assessed values to grow as much. So it goes from 84 cents to 87 cents in 2030. As Tim referenced earlier, for us to get to that next comparable city of Lafayette and Noblesville in that green box down near the bottom. For Noblesville, for Lafayette, if we want to get to that same tax rate in 2026, we can potentially increase our rates by 20 cents. To get to Noblesville's tax rates, we could increase it by 13 cents. Now, we're not saying we should or need to, that's really depending on the city council's appetite and the mayor's administration. But just to give you guys an idea of what that could mean for this, city's finances, in that blue box, I put in the amount of debt levy that'll mean every year if we raised our rates from where we currently are to $1. And that gets us about $8 to $8.5 million every year in debt levy that we can use to pay for the capital funding. Now, we go to, I know I'm sort of a little crunch on time. If we go to the next page, we sort of put together the debts that we're looking to closing within this year or potentially the first half of next year. The two big ones are the Park 2026 GO and the City 2026 GOs. If you remember the capital improvement plan that we showed earlier, those already incorporates these two fundings. So these don't actually help with that $10 to $12 million in unfunded capital. That's something to keep in mind. And the DPW building bond that Jeff mentioned earlier, that's also included in the capital improvement plan as well.
But very much not confirmed, that's
Yes.
the thing that.
Very much not confirmed. That's just, we need to show that in there, otherwise that unfunded amount will increase by $33 million. And that's a huge red flag, but I do want to point that out. Are we able to go to these handouts, Jeff? Do you think it'd be possible for us to go to real quick?
See, they're not on the presentation.
They're not on the presentation, unfortunately. It's this one.
We have 10 minutes left, which is alerting if you want to public comment that.
Yes, I will make this really quick. And this really is just to show what the impact of issuing those bonds are on the city.
Which.
It's this one, and we could just go to the second page, so I'll make it.
Yeah, because it looks like the first page glitched in conversion to Google also.
That's.
So which page are you on in the packet right now?
It's the second one. It'll say city general obligation debt tax rates.
This one right here.
Yes, correct. So the yellow, the first 3 rows are the current bonds and the tax rates on those bonds and what they're projected to be. The green are the potential bonds that we're looking at issuing, and if we issue them, what we expect those tax rates to be. So if we look at the 2026 GO bond, that's about 2.4 cents. And that DPW building, even though it's larger bond, we're issuing that over a longer term. That's going to be at about 2.9 cents. So that's almost 5.5 cents increase to the city's tax rates if we were to issue those bonds. Now, the 2026 bonds, those will last us forever. The current conversation that we're having with Jeff is that we're looking at 6-year bonds, but rotating every 3 years. So if we issue one in 2026, we'll have to issue another one in 2029 to fund those capital items with another rate going on in 2030, another. So you see the bottom right corner of that green, that's another nearly 2.4 cents. So all in all, you'll see our total debt tax rates from issuing the city GO bond will be from the 4.39 cents all the way up to 8.9 cents. And that'll be about a 4.6 cent increase. Now do I have time to go so far? No, we don't have time.
Sorry.
It's okay, so 4.6 cents, the park, the park will increase by about 2.7. So that's just over 7 cents increase in total tax rates. And we remember the tax rates tab that we looked at previously, to get the $1, we'll need to increase it by 14 cents. So we have another about 7 cents to go, even with the implementation of these bonds, if they do decide to go through. And I'm done.
That is an awful lot in a short
That is
period
an
of
awful
time.
lot.
Sorry.
Time, and I.
Go first next time.
I should go first next time.
Yeah.
Make sure to do that.
Right, and I should maybe work with you, Dr. a little bit on, talking about those bonds, maybe including those in some kind of a report, because it would be good to develop, so that's a bond, some potential bonding. requests that may be coming over. So let's go ahead and move on to public comments. So if there's anybody, there's still no public members of the public in the room, but if you're online and interested in making a public comment, please raise your hand. And please just be mindful of time because if Councilmember Rallo has a hard stop at 10, that means we all do because we'll lose quorum. So Mr. Keo, go ahead. I'll have a timer on my watch going for about 3 minutes, but I would appreciate it if you were as efficient as possible and they're needed. Floor is yours.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, I'm Kevin Keogh. Page 15 of the Reedy Financial Group's presentation today highlights the fundamental requirements for sound municipal management. The minimum yearly review of the formal financial policies, specifically regarding debt, investments, and cash reserve, along with a formal public review of long-range operational planning and the annual comprehensive financial report. Really explicitly notes the rating agencies like the S&P evaluates these practices during their credit reviews. While the fiscal committee itself is not yet a year old and the city has not historically aligned with the GFOA best practices, the focus represents a necessary step forward. The city seems to be currently working with outside advisors to draft these policies, but policy adoption without regular legislative reviews is incomplete governance. This ongoing review mechanism is something critical that should be codified. For the past year, there have been public comments about the consistently pointed out the glaring vulnerability in our financial governance. Our ACFR is routinely taking over 16 months after the close of the year to be published. Let's be clear about what a 16-month delay actually means. First, it severely diminishes the practical utility and value of the audited figures. Trying to build a budget, reviewing budget to actual performance without timely audited numbers means you're flying blind during the most critical period of the fiscal decision making. Secondly, and most critically, to Reedy's point regarding the credit evaluation, it undermines market trust. The municipalities continue to have continuing disclosure agreements that expect annual audited financials to be submitted to bondholders on the EMA within 6 months after the fiscal year end. Taking 16 months and routinely filing notices of late submission strains the principle of good faith disclosure to the municipal market. Bondholders and rating agencies expect timely, reliable data. When a city repeatedly misses those windows by nearly a year, it risks its standing with the very entities that price our debt. I urge the Fiscal Committee and City Council to take 2 concrete actions. Establish a formal annual calendar item dedicated to specifically reviewing and reauthorizing the city's debt, investment, and reserve policies. Institute formal oversight of multi-year operational and capital plans, the ACFR completion timeliness, and standing annual review of the completed ACFR as a direct responsibility of the Fiscal Committee if it continues, or by all means, the City Council. Codifying this regular review mechanism will protect the city's credit rating, build institutional memory, and ensure that our financial management matches professional standards. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Keo. Are there any other members of the public online who would like to make public comments? All right, I don't see other hands going up, so that means we have 3 minutes to mention that our next fiscal committee meeting is in fact 2 weeks from today on August 7th. We already probably said that we were going to follow up again or continue to follow up related to elected official salary stuff at that meeting. So we'll be in touch about that. I want to send a huge thank you to the folks at Reedy for coming and for all of this information that you shared. Any other last words from anybody?
If we have follow-up questions related to the reports from Reedy, should we send them to Jeff?
Please send them to me.
Yeah, we'll go through Jeff.
Great. Any other last things? I always really appreciate it when you comment. I'm always extremely sorry that I mean, we had an extra half an hour and still, there's just so much information. And I think that this committee acts in a really important way right now, which maybe the council has had before to delve deeply into some of these matters. And that's certainly part of my approach to this, but that also means that we have a lot of questions about things. You need a lot of self-understanding. So Anyway, thank you. And we are.